welcome to the Republic of Middle-Aged Men. You've got your hosts tonight, myself, Tim, and you've got Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
Hey,
guys, tonight I'm trying something different. Cognac.
Woohoo.
It's this little bottle. It's French, so I don't think it's Camus. It's probably pronounced some other way.
How? Say it for me.
Well, it's Camus Exo Elegance. So yeah,
does sound like a cologne. About. You sure it's not cologne?
Well, if it's cologne, it's very nice tasting cologne. It does smell nice, but it's not strong. Yeah. How about you, Lachlan? What are you drinking tonight?
Creature of habit. I'm still having gin and tonics. I've got a different one tonight. I've got a Tanqueray French black currant special edition or something like that. It's quite nice.
Good.
Fancy.
And, how about you, Ruben?
I'm on the Captain Morgan's original spiced gold.
Oof, there you go.
That sounds good.
Mm.
Captain Morgan. Morgan's one of my favourite car makers. They do a 3-wheel Morgan, which I just love, and if I won Lotto, it would be the first vehicle I would buy after a TR7.
I've never heard you talk about it before ever, Tim.
So once there was a concept car of an electric 3-wheel Morgan, and Lachlan sent it to me, and at first I thought it was blasphemy. But I've warmed to it. I actually quite like it now.
It's super cool. It's got a weird asymmetrical headlight arrangement, which I can't quite remember because it was ages ago that thing got sort of put up as a concept, but it was a really unique looking thing. And it sounded like it had a supercharger as well. Like it had a really unusual kind of sound for an electric car. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good.
Why are you guys so obsessed with cars that I couldn't possibly ever fit in?
You could fit in a Morgan 3-wheeler. It's got no roof. You just step into it, and then away you go. And you can, being Morgan, you could probably get them to customize it. Yeah, from factory. They do make cars to order because they still make them by hand. So, which is good. Did you see Richard Hammond's one got destroyed? That one that he got made online, got people to vote on the interior colours. He had a flood on his property and it got completely destroyed and written off. It's like really sad. Yeah, really sad. They're a cool car. Before we get into it, we've all had holidays this week. I've done a lot of gaming. I played heaps of Destiny 2. Got my character all specced up. I've got my gear score above the minimum light level, which is fantastic. And I even got to do some gaming yesterday with my son, my niece, and my dad all playing Destiny 2. We were doing the big 6-player public event thing with 2 randos, and that was really, really good. And then we did some PvP and some other 2 versus 2 games, and my son is getting pretty good. He sniped me a few times in PvP, and I was like, ooh, someone's getting competence.
Once I was the Padawan, but now I am the master.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're not there yet, bud, but you're certainly improving a lot. And but my niece and I teamed up against my dad and him and dominated because my son just is so easily distracted. All you have to do is like shoot a bullet in a direction and he'll run off by himself and leave my poor old man by himself. And then like Munch, my niece, just stays with me and we just destroy. So it was funny. But it just sort of highlighted the difference between a 12, 13-year-old girl and a 12, 13-year-old boy. 12, 13-year-old girl could pay attention and work as a team. 12, 13-year-old boy, no. It was funny. Did you get up to any gaming, Lachlan?
Not much actually. I just downloaded off Game Pass. There was a new one called Sable, which is just kind of a bit of a unusual, kind of like, how do I put it? It looks like a kind of graphic novel style animation, if you know what I mean. I've only just sort of started in on that. I had still been playing a bit of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I've snuck a little bit into, but no, I've mostly been doing gardening and stuff this week, and stuff around the house, clearing out garages, and doing lots of middle-aged stuff that you need to do. Although I have dropped the cappuccino off at the workshop, so stuff's about to happen on that tomorrow. So
very good. What's going on there?
So look, I actually I got impatient and slapped the wheels on myself. So I'd sort of had my sneak peek there, but I've got coilover suspension going on. I've got a new catback exhaust going on. A bunch of other just sort of boring mechanical stuff, which is just more sort of service related than sort of performance related. And a few other sort of like cosmetic sort of trinkets. So I've got I chucked on the carbon fiber boot, but I've got to get it clear coated, and the carbon fiber roof panel clear coated as well, because otherwise the UV will make it go yellow, as it tends to happen. But so it's gonna be pretty cool. Get my vision starting to come together, which is pretty cool.
Nice. So does the exhaust, is it less offensive than the one that's on there? I remember you telling me the one that was on there sounded like a Milo tin full of angry bees or something.
Yeah, it sucks, the exhaust that's on there. The guy who had the car reckons it was the standard exhaust, but it's not. I think it's got like I don't know. I'm not sure if it's got a hole in it somewhere, and I think it's using like a motorbike tip on it or something like that. It just sounds crap. It's got really bad resonance and stuff at like usable sort of revs that just drives you crazy when you're driving around in it. So this one that I've got is called a quiet power. So it's supposed to be not too offensive, but you still hear a little bit of rumble, if you know what I mean. So hopefully it's a good, sensible, but still fun sort of option on there. But
a rumble out of, what's the engine capacity?
Was it 665 cubic centimeters? Yes.
I guess you can
not even a 1 liter engine. Yeah,
there are some loaner motorbikes that sound a little bit rumbly, so I guess you can make it a bit rumbly.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a sports bike currently. So we'll see if it sounds a bit more mature after this gets chucked on there. But who knows? I might get bored and throw a Suzuki 1.2 litre motorbike engine on there and just cut to the chase, huh?
Got some Hayabusa in there.
Yeah, I'd have to stick Suzuki, mate. So just throw a big Gixxer in there or something.
Yeah, why not? How about you, Rubes? Did you get up to gaming?
Oh, a little bit of gaming. I had a good week though. I threw some weights around almost every day, so my body's feeling pretty good. And I hooked into a book. I felt the desire to try to understand mass societal compliance. So I went back to some of the classics about pre-World War II Germany. Reading one called So They Thought They Were Free, which is a bloke that interviewed a bunch of National Socialists post-World War II to try and figure out, what was their thought process in joining the party and so on. So that's been fascinating. And apart from that, today I wrote my first blog post ever, so that was good fun.
Nice.
But it's been a good week, really relaxing and enlightening.
Good. Well, I'm back to work tomorrow, so.
Me too.
Sad.
Absolutely.
Nah, it's all good. All right. Well, let's get into this week's one. So, we're having a repeat of book 3 where. We're going to have to split this book into 3 episodes, not 2, because it's just so chunky. But the good news story is we're going to be able to start wrapping up looking at the larger writing, so to speak. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we actually finally get a definition this week.
Yeah, so
we don't know whether it's going to be the end one or whether it's going to be the right one, but we get a definition.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's something.
10 weeks
halfway in.
Yeah, 10 weeks in. 10 weeks in, we get something. So All right. So look, where we wrapped up last week, we were just coming into where they're talking about the Apollo and the god of Delphi in regards to the institution of temples and sacrifices and the services of the gods. That's kind of
I
where
think
we
that
pulled the pin.
they're coming off the back of a whole bunch of stuff about asking a question around whether they should legislate all different aspects of life, and I think that was the last one they got to, was just, do we need to set the rules around that?
Yeah. So thankfully, which is very out of character, Socrates decides to handball that one, um, which I'm so grateful for. And as every week passes on, I just keep thinking back to early in chapter 1 where the old guy just walks off laughing. I'm like, you bastard. You got him rolled up.
We're 10 weeks in, you bastard.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway, so look, he decides, look, we've got some things in place for that already. It's not something that we're particularly experts at, so let's just run with that. And
So he basically says, well, that's your state, that's your perfect state, and then in my opinion he just gets up and tries to walk away.
Something like that. It was another classic Socrates handball move of, guys, my work here's done, so you guys step on in, tag in, and do the heavy lifting now. You can. Should be easy to find justice now that we have the perfect state. So.
Did you have that highlighted at all? I didn't really pull out a quote, but yeah, he basically says, all right, you boys, you brothers figure it out now, and I'll be on my way.
Pretty much. I just love it how Glaucon just kind of just slaps it straight back on him and says, let me remind you, you promised to find justice yourself if we built this perfect society. So he pretty quickly backpedals. And I
don't know how old he is.
Of course, I'll help you, but I want you guys to help
come along for the ride. It feels like feigned humility to me, but I don't know how old he is at this point, but it almost feels kind of like he's forgotten and they've had to remind him. Like, remember you said that you weren't going to let this go, Socrates, because it's really, really important. He goes, oh yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
I'll read the passage from my book for those listening. Okay. So after he says, look, let's leave the religious stuff to the priests, they go, you are right, and we will do as you propose. So, but where amid all this is justice? Son of Arison, tell me where. Now that our city has been made habitable, light a candle and search, and get your brother and Polemarchus and the rest of our friends to help, and let us see in it where we can discover justice, and where injustice, and in what they differ from one another, and which of them the man who would be happy should have for his portion, whether seen or unseen by gods and men. Nonsense, said Glaucon. Did you not promise to search yourself, saying that for you not to help justice in her need would be an impiety? I do not deny that I said so, and as you remind me, I will be as good as my word. But you must join. We will.
I'll be as good as my word, but you had to remind me to do it.
Yeah, and you have to help me.
You have to help me. Yeah. The moocher, Socrates, the mooch.
Yeah,
absolutely. Every time, you can always trust him on that one.
So that leads us up to our next point of where is the justice? Where is justice?
So
they kind of lay out a framework for how they're going to decide what justice is. You're about to say something, Lachlan, go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we just sort of land on this this concept that they're sort of going to run with it. And we know, Socrates kind of likes these frameworks to have his arguments around. So he builds one here. And he says, what are the qualities we're going to find in this state? And he's saying, if we find the three main qualities, then the one that remains should be justice. So let's go and name these three qualities now, and we'll go through what they are, and then whatever's left, we should be able to find justice.
Yeah,
That's
he
what they
pretty
set out
much
to do.
just almost. It kind of feels like he just presupposes that this is the perfect state, and these are the four qualities that that state will exhibit, and here they are. And he just
Yeah.
goes
Yep.
wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. And there's sort of
Yep.
no pushback. They're just like, yeah, we have a perfect state. That's what they're going to be.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think
They-
that they're established. What's the word I'm looking for? They're the established standards at the time. So, which is wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice.
Well, Tim, you had an interesting thought on that, didn't you? You sort
Yeah.
of rang a bell for some more contemporary ideas, and when I
Yeah.
say contemporary, I mean 200 years after this.
Yeah, so I do enjoy some Stoicism, and they're the Stoic Virtues. So Stoicism was established 200-ish years after Socrates, and these were the principles of Stoicism from day one, which suggests to me that they were already commonly used, and they've continued to be used since then. So the Catholic Church also refer to these four principles as well, and even now, like, they're not words that we're not used to hearing when we're thinking about these types of ideas. So, yeah, I reckon
you
it's
said-
just a standard set of lists that point to virtue.
You said something interesting about the Catholic Church thing on it. Something about them saying,
Yeah, so
uh,
yeah, they
go.
were saying that in the same way that Newton didn't invent the laws that he is known for discovering, but he articulated them. The Catholics will argue that Plato and Socrates didn't come up with these things, but they articulated them, and that they were able to articulate them because they're true, and that's why the Catholic Church embraces the same principles as these guys and as the Stoics, because they believe that they're true.
I think Plato would have agreed with that. Oh, well, Plato and Socrates would have agreed with that because they're very big on, the truth, and Socrates and Plato goes on to articulate this theory of forms. This idea of abstract principles that are more real than the physical world. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting that you picked up on that.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's a guy who does a website called Everyday Stoic. He writes books. His name's Ryan Holiday. He did an article comparing Stoicism to Christianity, and basically does a really honest observation of the two belief systems and shows their similarities and their differences, and how they have slightly different answers about how to find the solutions to your problems and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if anyone's listening and is interested, he's certainly a good guy to check out because he's intellectually honest. He'll just say, this is what the Stoics believed, and this is what the Christians believed, and this is how they're the same, and this is how they're different. He doesn't insert himself anywhere in that conversation on that article that is written about that. It's just purely, this is the facts, and this is how they compare.
I didn't realise they were mutually exclusive because I must admit I don't have too much sort of background knowledge of Stoicism other than really what we've sort of been discussing off and on. So
yeah, no, it's a thing. What's his book? His most famous book is The Obstacle is the Way, and that's where he breaks down a lot of the lessons from Marcus Aurelius's journal, as well as he's a big fan of Seneca and those guys. So yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah, that's there is crossover because even Saint Augustine talks quite a bit about that crossover in City of God, which is what I think that's written about 400 years after the death of Christ or thereabouts, and even he's addressing those crossovers. So it's it's a debate that's been around for a while.
yeah, okay, interesting.
Yep.
So I got sort of two questions off the back of that. So they've given these four virtues that they say would be present in a perfect state, and my first question is four enough? Like, well, what else? What else could be? Like, could there be others? Like, are we happy with just the four? And then my other question is sort of, if we take those four virtues, let's just say we accept that's what a good society would exhibit.
Mm.
And can we take those? Could we even take those 4 virtues and apply them to today, to our societies today? Is it even translatable, or is it almost like a different language at this point?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Do you have something to say on that, Lachlan, or you chewing it over?
Yeah, it certainly needs a bit of thinking power on that one. Yeah, look, I think this is very much in the just this Socratic way of thinking is to just try and keep things simple. And I think probably if you're in a bar having a chat with him, he'd probably sort of say, you know what, there probably are a few more we could include in that as well. Um,
But for
and
the
I
sake
think
of
just
argument,
yeah, and I think he's just trying to keep it brief. You know what I mean? But
Socrates, keep it brief. Right on.
well, I mean, as brief it can be. I mean, we could be here for 100 weeks rather than 10 weeks, right?
I'm going to pull up that clip when we hit 100 episodes. Write it down.
But I think we just sort of see this is a bit of a theme with him. When he does things, he seems to like to break things down into groups of 3, groups of 4, and it never seems to be much more than that. It's just like let's just try and kind of compress it because he has this philosophy around keeping things simple.
That's
So,
true. Yeah,
look,
he's always about all that. He's all about that unity.
yeah. So look, I don't know if he's trying to treat these as a bit more all encompassing. And I guess like as we start to talk through, what is wisdom, what is courage, they do talk about a few things, but I don't know. I mean, where is I don't know. I guess temperance has a very sort of loose meaning and can sort of like encapture a lot of things. Because I mean, you might sort of say, the principle that should be there, like I don't know, honesty or trustworthiness or something like that. I don't know.
Well, my book says self-discipline is how it translates that temperance. So yeah, you're right. Like, what is it? What is it? What does it mean?
Yeah.
But
Can I put forward a different angle before we continue? I actually think it's probably just assumed that that's what it is. In the same way that how can I as a Christian, if I was to say when you look at a civilization that's living under God's law, then a default set of rules would be the 10 Commandments. You just know 10 Commandments. If they're doing those things, then they're meeting the requirements of God's law. So I think it's probably just that. It's probably that they've already debated what is virtue and what is virtuous, and that these are the 4 principles of virtue. And so it's like just an assumed, well, that's not up for debate. That's just what it is. I think that's probably more what it is too. Like it might be both. It might be him trying to keep it simple, but I suspect, given that the very first Stoic walks out and goes, "These are the values," because I've already learnt them from Heraclitus or whatever his name was.
Yeah,
I think it's just a thing that is for granted, lack of a better term.
I find that interesting, and I don't know enough about the period to sort of back that. Only to sort of put the counter argument of the fact that they're having this conversation is the fact that they're seeing a society embrace rules that are not sort of in falling in with those kind of principles. And that the very reason they're having these conversations because people are acting in ways that are dishonest, and that that's the whole sort of argument, I guess, is that
yeah, you're right. Because
I can see that.
Like early on, they basically say that most people accept the idea that justice is the will of the powerful, or whatever it was, or that acting unjustly is more beneficial. So the society that they're in has sort of accepted that.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like as long as you're getting ahead, it's okay to screw everyone over as long as you give thanks to the gods and get back in the good graces before you cark it, right? So, and that's why I think they're trying to sort of establish this. So, so in some sense, I don't know, maybe it is well known what they should be doing, as you're sort of saying, Tim. It's just that they're not doing it.
Yeah. Well, once again, they're trying to they're trying to sketch out, this perfect society, I suppose. So that's why they can sort of talk in that fashion. Look, for me, one thing that and this is like, I totally acknowledge that this is probably because we live so much later and so much has happened, and our societies are so much different. But I think when I read those virtues, I was like, where is charity or mercy? You could probably sort of mix them together, because I think if most people would say, for a society to be good, there needs to be compassion or charity or mercy. It's got to take care of the poor. And sort of, so for me, when I read that list of virtues, I was like, that seems like it's missing.
Did they
Yeah.
really care about that back then? I actually don't know
No,
the
I
answer.
totally agree. But for me, I think universally speaking, that they were missing that as a virtue, and I think it probably should have been there. I know why it's not, and you can see that it's not when Socrates is describing the way his state is going to function when it comes to people who are sick or can't fulfill their roles. He basically just says, "Well, they can die." Yeah,
Yeah.
and our society doesn't see that as acceptable at all.
No, no. Yeah, no, that's really, yeah, it's a good observation.
Yeah. Well, the updated heavenly virtues as deemed by the Catholics since those four are faith, hope, charity, fortitude, justice, temperance, and prudence. Is one of the translations. So I think they've added to it.
I've got it a couple. Yeah.
Probably as a result
Yeah,
of that.
I don't think it's debatable that those ideas of mercy and charity and hope are all things that have developed since with the advent of Christianity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You'd say though, I guess, like some of the rules they're trying to put in place and the society they're trying to build would establish things like hope, and I don't know,
Hope, maybe, yeah.
and it may naturally foster something like charity in the way that they're operating that city, because it is different to what is the current sort of situation that they're dealing with.
Yeah, totally.
This perfect vision that they're trying to set up would probably, in all likelihood, have just naturally sort of have, hope and a little bit of charity sort of occurring, within
Well,
it.
you do. Well, you do hit on something interesting, because remember we just got done talking about the religious side of society was just going to be off to them. And even in early Western society, charity was pretty much was the what do you call it? Was the purview of the church, or churches, or religion.
Yeah.
So maybe it's possible that that's why they didn't even consider it as a virtue, because they're looking at, I guess, what we would call today the secular state. Because it's almost a given that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would argue there's no space for charity in this model, because in this model, if you are too sick to do your job, the solution is you'll just die anyway. Like they don't actually have a space for someone who's permanently disabled who can't do their function. It's essentially get better or you're going to die.
There's other levels of charity though too, like besides sort of health, I suppose. So whilst maybe you're not able to function, but it could be just sort of, I don't know, someone's fallen on hard times or something, right? And they're like, okay, the potter's had to go and, I don't know, pawn all his tools or whatever sell off all his tools in order to, I don't know, get some situation sorted. And
but that's why they wanted to
go buy him some new tools. But yeah, I don't know, but it could be that kind of thing as well.
But I think that's why they wanted to standardise the wages for those guys, to avoid all those things. Like I think they thought that was part of the solution. I don't know. Like I'm not
for the guardians.
No, for society. Like when they're talking about, I think there was still a standard. Didn't they talk about wages for the different trades?
No, I thought that
Guardians.
Was just Guardians? Okay.
But they were very big on you stay in your lane.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
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 So that was. Yeah, sorry, go mate.
I was just going to say they had sort of established something which was kind of interesting though, in that the middle class effectively would be the wealthy class, which was sort of different to most other sort of societies as well. And look, in fairness, if you think about how Greek society was then as well, there was a really high level of wealth so it wasn't just people who were necessarily like, hunter gatherers who are just sort of, living hand to mouth every single day. I mean, there were certainly people who were living in luxury, loads of cash,
Yeah, they'd moved beyond that
into modern
hunter-gatherer stage
times.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, charity does have a relevance as far as discussion goes anyway. So,
Yeah, agree.
Mm.
All right.
Yeah, so
well,
sorry to sidetrack you, but my other spin-off question for that was just taking these four sets of virtues, trying to apply them or promote them in today's current society. Do you think it'd still be like talking a different language?
a bit. If you talk about, wisdom and education, it really depends where you are and what kind of education you're talking about.
Well, I think even that is very different from their conception of education, because their education is very much about character and developing
Yes.
good habits. I don't think our education these days is not focused like that. I don't think.
No, it's more about knowledge than behavior or character and
Or
all that sort
wisdom,
of thing.
so to speak.
could you say that this should be applied to politics or those in position of authority? I think.
Oh yeah, I
That's
totally
exactly
think they should treat our politicians like guardians. They should be on a fixed wage. They should. No, I'm kidding. I was going to.
No, I meant around these, like, if you, like, maybe we're thinking too broadly, because our society has many more layers
Facets. Yeah, very much so.
than this fictional republic. So, but our equivalent of guardians would be our politicians. Equivalent. I'll use that word loosely. So, is that the right set of standards for them? Wisdom, courage. I'd love some courage, temperance, and justice.
I think they'd be absolutely like aspirational for that kind of position. Sadly, aspirational, not actual. But
Yeah, look, I can't see how more of that stuff would be a bad thing. Put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's start breaking down what they lay out here. So, wisdom is the first thing that they put forward.
Yeah.
So
it's actually kind of
talk
talking
about
direct.
What is wisdom?
And they're really drawing like a direct parody to what you're talking about there with the politicians, Tim. I mean, because they're asking about whether the wisdom is the knowledge of like trades or something like that, or whether it's useful wisdom, which I thought was
a little
somewhat,
bit
a little bit elitist there.
Yeah, so I think they give the examples of if you're a carpenter, the knowledge of a carpenter isn't the sort of wisdom they're talking about, or the knowledge of the person making pots. I think the distinction what defines there the city as having wisdom.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I think the distinction there is having knowledge of those trades is not what makes a state wise.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that it's not valuable. It's just when you're talking about the wisdom of the state, they're not talking about knowledge of those trades, which I guess that takes the sting out of it a little.
Well, and then they will also refer to the military, I think. So they say in the same way that I just don't want to get this wrong, but essentially they say that a city's courage, probably jumping ahead here, but their courage isn't built on the courage of the blacksmith or the courage of the carpenter. It's built on the courage of the soldiers.
I think you're right, and it's basically the same argument. But there is, I think, an important point that he tries to bring out, which I think becomes relevant later. But he essentially says, so those things, wisdom and courage, are applicable to a small number of people within the state. However, we take that to be an attribute of the state as a whole, even though it's only a small number that exhibit that particular virtue.
Yeah. And when they're looking for wisdom, again, like they're talking about the wisdom that's useful for the running of a state, and that it's about whether people could give counsel on matters that are going to influence how you deal with your neighbors, the politics of that, how you would go to war, and all those kinds of things. And as Rube sort of says, like whilst the knowledge of a carpenter is useful, it's not useful in that kind of circle. So they basically land on the fact that Glaucon sort of says, well, it's the guardians, obviously, who have to fill that position because they have that knowledge, they have that education, and they can provide that kind of counsel that's needed in that sort of situation.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good explanation.
So that's kind of what they define wisdom as. I highlighted a bit where they kind of define courage.
Yep.
I don't know whether I really understood what they were trying to say about courage.
I'll read it out and see what it is.
It's the analogy of dye.
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're talking about dyeing clothes.
I can explain that well.
Yeah, do it, please.
Okay, so because none of us are familiar with dyeing clothes, but all of us are Bunnings hacks. So, and this room behind me, I built with the help of many others, but it was a garage and now it's a man cave. And if you look closely, you can see that I made this room, not a tradesman, because you'll see in the gyprock lots and lots of uneven spots and imperfections and dents from hammers.
Character.
Yeah, character's one way of describing it. So I think essentially the analogy he's trying to give with the dyeing, I can give with gyprock, which is no matter what colour you paint that gyprock, whether it's the best colour in the world, if you haven't done the gyprocking properly and got that surface undercoated so it's all really clean and white, then when you paint that colour on there, it's going to have imperfections. So that was the point of the dyeing analogy, was if you select the right fabric and then you dye it purple, it will look good. But if you haven't taken the time to select the right white fabric, then no matter how good the purple dye is, the gown that you make out of it will look garbage because the cloth and the selection process before applying the dye was garbage. So then I think what they're saying is, in the same way that the white cloth is under the purple, it's the same for the application of courage for the soldiers and then the guardians, in that the soldiers are like the undercoat and the guardians are the paint. Does that make sense more, or did I confuse you even more?
That's different from... Yeah, sorry.
There you go, Ribs, you go.
See, the way that I tried to reconcile that, and I don't think I'm right by any means, but the way I saw it was they're saying that courage is like a piece of clothing that when it's subject to punishment doesn't lose its colour. So what you want is people who, when under pressure, they don't lose that. Courage is not losing that colour or that character or what is right and what is wrong under pressure.
I landed probably somewhere a bit closer to Tim, I reckon, where
you're probably right. Yeah.
Where it was something along akin to sort of like, you're building the foundation. So if you don't start with the first thing with the dyeing was to have that perfect selection of the right raw material, and that's like the guardian selection process, right? And then you go through the further steps where you're building the education and the indoctrination of you into this society and the levels and all that sort of thing. And that's going to build you with such character that you have the resolve and strength. So maybe what you're saying, Rubes, about being able to weather the use and the challenges of life or whatever it's going to be, and to be able to sort of remain strong in the face of challenge. Are you going to forget your training and your morals or whatever else when you're faced with temptation, or you're faced with, I think, pleasure or pain was basically the parallels that they sort of drew there. And that if you're going to crumble when threatened, or are you going to stand fast and be courageous for your city? That's kind of how I took it.
And that was what courage is. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Lachlan. And I think Because he says, then now I said, you will understand what our object was in selecting our soldiers and educating them in music and gymnastics. We were contriving influences which would prepare them to take the dye of the law's imperfection, and the colour of their opinion about dangers and of every other opinion was to be indelibly fixed by their nature and training, not to be washed away by such potent lies as pleasure, etc., etc.
And that was also going back to where they were talking about, if people could be easily influenced in a classroom, that they could be challenged on their philosophy and be so quickly and easily turned away by some teacher or scholar who's challenging their beliefs and saying that they've got to be able to be strong enough to have resolve in the face of that sort of thing.
So basically, courage is that ability to hold fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost faith in a way. It's, sticking to it in a way, like.
Yeah.
Um,
right. So there's that wisdom we've covered, and then courage.
Yes.
Yep.
So now we're up to
Temperance.
Temperance,
yes, yeah. Temperance.
Which I think I said earlier, which my book translates as self-discipline.
Yeah, but Socrates is a fan of the Temperance. He reckons this is the best of the three so far.
Well, and I think this is where he also says temperance is applicable to the whole, everyone in the state. This is not just something that's displayed by the guardians or whatnot. Temperance is something that every individual should display. So does anyone have a crack at what is meant by temperance? Because I was a bit lost on this too.
Well, I was talking about this around the fire with my kids tonight. Right. So that was interesting. I'm probably way off, but I was just talking about it with them. So I'll give you the example. So I was, because I was talking about temperance, or moderation, and so I said to my son, I'm like, why do you think moderation is important to be just? And he was like, oh, I don't know. What does moderation mean? And I'm like, that's a good question. I'm like, well, if you play Xbox 10 hours a day, every single day, that's not really playing it in moderation, because it's going to stop you from exercising, it's going to stop you from going to work, it's going to stop you from going to school, it's going to stop you from having face-to-face interactions with your family and friends, because you're just doing one task. And that can be true for anything. It can be for reading books, it can be for playing soccer, but just run with gaming, because that's the one that he does. And I'm like, say, moderation's important because it means you don't miss out on other things. I'm like, but what about from a justice perspective? And so I said this example, it made both my kids laugh out loud. I was like, okay, so your friend from school just stole a bag of lollies from the shops, 200 years jail. And and he just started laughing. He goes, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, but that's why you need to have moderation. Like, it needs to be a moderate amount of punishment, right? You can't just go, here's 200 years of punishment for a small crime. And likewise, you wouldn't want to go, I'll wait until that guy gets to 5 murders before I do something, because that's not just either. So how does moderation fit in there? And he's like, you've got to have a fair punishment. So he kind of like, it was interesting to have a kid sort of go, well, what's moderation? And then give them an example of justice where moderation wasn't used, and they just laugh because they realise that's ridiculous. I'm like, why is it ridiculous? Why is it ridiculous for a kid to steal a bag of lollies to get 200 years jail? And he's like, because it's only a small crime. So I don't know how helpful that is for the conversation, but I was trying to talk to my kids about it just to see what they thought around the campfire tonight. And so we've decided moderation is finding that sweet spot of not having too much and too little, because that's what makes sense for things that we do. And there is one saying that I've taught my son, which is a Stoic saying, which is, pleasures without limits are punishments. And that's something I've been hammering into him. And he's like, yes, if you eat just food all day, like bad food like McDonald's or something like that, then you'll get sick. You'll get too fat, you'll get sick, you'll die early. I'm like, yeah, so it becomes punishment.
That's one of your 7 deadly sins, isn't it? Gluttony, hey?
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He's like, oh, it's gluttony. So it was a cool conversation. If if a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old can understand at some level what moderation is, then surely I can figure it out.
Yeah, look, I think that's a pretty good baseline there. Because I mean, yeah, more or less, he's talking about self control and
Yeah,
that a person, a man, should be able to look at temptation and make a rational decision in their mind and say that's not worth it. I'm going to stick to the path that I've chosen to walk, right? And whatever
yeah.
that temptation may be.
In my book, it says what temperance does is it produces a harmony between its strongest and weakest and middle elements, whether you measure by the standard of intelligence or of strength or of numbers or money or the like. And so we are quite justified in regarding self-discipline or temperance as this unanimity in which there unanimity I can't say that word, in which there is a natural concordance between higher and lower about which of them is to rule in the state and the individual. So my kind of takeaway from that is he's kind of saying temperance creates harmony between your different levels
It's like a
within the
yin
state.
yang
But
idea, right?
yeah,
Mm.
It's interesting. From what I read, it was sort of like they're saying that they're going to look at the guardians as kind of like the embodiment of what temperance looks like. And as the leaders for the state, they're sort of setting the example. And that by doing so, the rest of the citizens are going to sort of, I don't know, follow it and embrace it. And that they're all sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. Whilst they're all at
yeah,
different levels and different hierarchies in the society, everyone will understand this is the way we should be in a good society, and we're all going to want to participate and have that harmony, like you're talking about, Rubes.
yeah,
Um, I, I like the idea of it. I'm not so sure it naturally. Look, I guess if you're in a society and your leaders are truly temperate, and that's what they're talking about in this thing is like being true and not just looking like you're doing something, but actually being something. Um, and all of your society, all of your leaders are of that nature. I guess it does just sort of filter down into everything else, right? Into the courts, the legislators, the general populace. So I guess there is something to what they're talking about there.
Yeah, I
yeah.
think
And that's
so.
kind of what I think they were getting at. What we were talking about last week, where it's like if you've got people that know how to act, you don't need to legislate down to the nth degree of every little thing because people are just doing what's right.
Yeah.
And I think also it's almost like touching on how they sort of had that enforced income for the guardians because it is kind of enforced. It's legislated temperance basically. They can't go nuts because they've only got so much money and they're not sort of permitted
Well,
to
yeah.
go beyond that.
Well, then they basically sort of said that it's really removing any chance of temptation there because they haven't got money to pay for a Corinthian girl or
Or the Athenian sweets or whatever it was.
that's right. That's right. So they can't sort of possess property or gold and silver and lots of thing, and or you know have a room
Yeah,
with a
so
door on it where you can hide something. So I mean, if you're setting up that kind of situation, you're kind of like absolving them of the choice in some ways.
but it sort of goes back to what you were saying that if your rulers are temperate and they're considered the highest, the gold of society, so to speak, then the
Yeah.
idea being that everyone will sort of look to that as a guide or
Yeah, exactly. Well, drum roll. So, what is justice? Which is what we've been trying to get an answer for forever.
yeah. Well, should we
wait till week's
comment
end.
firstly on the method that Socrates has kind of put out? He's sort of said you've got these four, and if we can identify the three, then what's left will give us justice. That's sort of what he says, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yep.
I almost feel like he's testing the theory of the four too in this moment. Did that occur to you?
Yeah.
Like, do you think he's actually going, well, traditionally we say these are the four things. If we take these three things away, the fourth will remain.
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, he's only really got a label for it. And this is where they sort of hit a bit of a roadblock in a sense, because whilst they're sort of saying, we think that's what the fourth pillar should be, is justice, and whatever else we can't attribute to those other three, whatever's left must be justice, right?
Yeah.
They still can't quite put their finger on it. And again, Socrates,
one of them says, yeah, which one of them goes, oh, you're a long time leading up to what you've got to say. I'm getting impatient.
Yeah, that was overdue. Very overdue.
Yeah. They have quite a bit of sort of wordplay going back and forward on all of that. So, because basically Socrates is just sort of saying, it should be self-evident now, and so guys, what can you see? And then, again, Glaucon's having to put it back on him and say, mate, come on.
Can I read this? Because I think it's hilarious. All right. So the time then has arrived, Glaucon, when, like huntsmen, we should surround the cover and look sharp that justice does not steal away and pass out of sight and escape us. For beyond a doubt she's somewhere in this country. Watch therefore and strive to catch a sight of her, and if you see her first, let me know. What that I could, but you should regard me rather as a follower who has just eyes enough to see what you show him. That is about as much as I am good for. Offer up a prayer
Stop
with me
stalling,
and
Socrates.
follow. He goes,
Stop stalling, mate.
But you must show me the way. Here is no path, I said, and the wood is dark and perplexing. Still, we must push on. Or let's push on. Here I saw something. Hello, I said. I began to perceive a track, and I believe that the quarry will not escape. Good news, he said. Truly, I said, we are stupid fellows. Why so? Why, my good sir, at the beginning of our inquiry ages ago, there was justice tumbling out at our feet, and we never saw her. Nothing could be more ridiculous, like people who go about looking for what they have in their hands. That was the way with us. We looked not at what we were seeking, but at what was far off in the distance, and therefore, I suppose, we missed her.
Still stalling.
What do you mean?
Said what it is.
Yeah. I mean to say that in reality, for a long time past, we've been talking of justice and have failed to recognise her. I grow impatient at the length of your exordium.
But it's something funny about Socrates, because right at the start he goes, I'm not going to let this go. Justice is important.
Yeah.
I will defend it. I'll defend it to my dying breath. But I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I still don't think he knows what it is, but he's having a crack at it anyway. Yeah.
So now he rambles on more, like, we said at the beginning that a man should practice one thing only, the thing to which his nature was best adapted. Now justice is this principle or a part of it. But yes, we often said that one man should do one thing only. I like how this guy just keeps saying, yeah, we did. We did that too. And further, we affirm that justice was doing one's own business and not being a busybody. We said so again and again, and many others have said the same to us. Yes, we said so. Then to do one's own business in a certain way may be assumed to be justice. Can you tell me whence I derive this inference?
Yeah, I love it. Glaucon's just not having it. He's just like, yeah, but what's your point? So,
he's so lost.
Yeah, they keep digging, don't they?
So if he goes, when did I find this out? And Glaucon's like, I can't tell you when you found it out, but I should like to be told when you found it out.
So that's it. Justice is minding your own business. Is that
doing what you're here to do and minding your own business? I'm going to remove my jumper. Give me a sec. I'm hot.
because that just
Well,
I don't know.
I think
it seems
all
a
they
little
labelled it as.
climactic.
Yeah, it was the power of the individual to do their own work was, I think, basically what they sort of land on justice being.
Yeah, that's better. That's better than mind your own business.
Yeah. So, and I think it's kind of like
Well, hang on, I'll put
I
the
get what
statement
they're
here.
sort of getting at, maybe, but it's just you're right there, Tim.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, I'll read out what he says it is.
go for it.
So it's to do one's own business in a certain way may be assumed to be justice. Like, how vague's that?
Yeah.
All right. So, what are the different ways you can take that? Because we're talking. Remember, we're talking about a society, like on a societal level. So, is he saying that it's? Because my immediate takeaway was, so justice is the state leaving the little guy alone to do his job well. So piss off with your red tape, go away with your regulations and your intrusive. We don't need that. Just leave the guy alone, because what is justice is for him to do his job and to do it unimpeded.
Well, and to be unimpeded, but also it sort of gets back to another argument that they were having. Well, not argument, but just something they kept talking about, which was that if you're in a class, you stick to that class, and that's where they get to with this, because it's they start talking about if you're kind of like impersonating somebody else's role, like say you're a merchant and you want to be a politician, but really your skill set is to be a merchant, and for the benefit of the state you should be a merchant, you shouldn't be a politician, and that it's ruinous for the state if you try and do a function that's not the best thing for you to do.
So you're not doing justice to the state or the people around you if you take on
Well,
something that you're not designed
yeah,
for.
well, because basically they always sort of say the opposite to a truth is also true, right? So, like, they're sort of saying if you're doing that is an injustice, then doing the role that you're supposed to be doing is justice.
Is justice. Very good.
I think that's where he
So that's-
goes, but I think he immediately starts to destroy that argument. Because he was
He's
saying,
talking out of his ass, frankly,
Yeah.
right? And he's just grabbing on to
but
whatever
he goes,
he
this.
can.
So he does describe that. He goes, this is injustice, and on the other hand, when the trader, the auxiliary, and the guardian each do their own business, that is justice and will make the city just. And he goes, well, I don't want to be overly confident. Like, I like this, but let's not be over confident. Let's investigate. And then they start investigating it at the individual level.
Oh, that's right. He kind of says, well, if we're right, then this will be the same at the individual level. And if it's the same at the individual level, we can be more confident that this is what it is.
Yeah.
Is that roughly what he says?
Kind of. And then that's where we go into next week's episode, I reckon. Because once you start looking at that individual level, it gets massive.
I don't know. I think I'm going to have to think about that a bit.
Land on though, because it's such a simple thing, and it.
Yeah.
I get where they're coming from, but look, they do use an example where they talk about where was it? They talk about the rulers of the state determining the law and the basis of the law. And it may be that a man may neither take what is another's nor be deprived of what is his own, right? And that this is a just principle, which they agree. And on that basis, then they sort of say, well, then also justice will be admitted to be the having and doing of what is man's own and what belongs to him.
But that does feel like justice.
That feels more like justice. Yeah. But they're still just kind of like tossing around a few different concepts in amongst here.
Well, I've got another idea. Another way that I kind of had a run at it was minding your own business. There's another aspect to that, which would be personal responsibility. So living up to your own personal responsibilities. Yep. And if you're looking at it in the context of the conversation, that would then also include behaving with courage and temperance and whatever that last one was.
Which is why I think they move into this. Let's look at this at the level of the person. I think you're on the same track there, Ruben.
I think a simple way to say it would be, if you're not doing what's best for the state, if you're not acting right, you're not doing justice to the state. And now the next question is is that the same as not doing justice to yourself and to others as individuals?
Well, yeah, but I think that thing that they were talking there before about the legislation thing, though, does kind of bring that back in on that personal angle, though, as well, because it's sort of saying that whole thing about, whilst it's keeping to yourself, but I think they mean a little bit more literally, like, don't mess in another man's business by like stealing their shit, bad mouthing them, or whatever,
Yeah.
because that's unjust behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just that sort of inference of that, like you're saying, Rubes, that personal responsibility to just get on and do your job without screwing around in everyone else's kind of biz. That's just slowing down the process and causing infighting or whatever else in that society, which is just a waste of energy and all that sort of thing, all that stuff that comes with injustice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's where they get into, but they haven't quite kind of fleshed it out. So I'm curious to see if they get
Probably
there.
need a hook in next week and see what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's stroll up to our favourite place to have a debrief at the local pub for lots of us, and let's talk about the last 4.5 chapters. So, I feel like we've got to a point in the book, and I might be wrong, but I feel like we've got to a point in the book where they've done their assessment of their fictional republic, and we're about to hone down onto the individual. So, discuss. I mean, where do we? Is that a satisfying answer of what justice is? Let's talk. That's our question. Is that a satisfactory answer at a society level of what is justice?
I think on a surface level, no, and I feel like we've fleshed it out. But I think at this point we might be apologising.
I think you're right.
We're engaging in apologetics on behalf of Socrates at this point, because some of the stuff we've said, I'm not even sure whether that's really where he's coming from. I mean, if it is, then it's probably a little bit nicer than what we initially thought, which was mind your own business. It's got to be more than that. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I 100% agree. It's just like on the surface value, like there is no definition. Like we're all talking about it and say, well, did they actually define it? And it's like, well, I think it's this, I think it's that. And they haven't really kind of like landed on it. Like I said, I think Socrates is still sort of like just clutching at straws here, trying to pull together. I don't think it's like with our inference, you can sort of maybe sort of see where they're trying to get to, but as you say, maybe that's just us. I'm not too sure if he's really there yet. So
I think it's actually closer than we think it is.
Right.
When I start thinking about it. So I hope I have the intelligence to say what I'm seeing in my mind's eye. So if you think about different scenarios where you go to court and you're pursuing justice, what has happened? So let's think about if you have property that you've worked for and obtained, and then it's stolen, then that's injustice. That aligns with this definition.
Yes, it does.
If someone
mind your own business.
Yes, and you're entitled to what you earn, and other people can't take that from you. So that aligns. If you think someone kills someone who is related to you, well, that aligns to this definition, because that person can no longer do their function and their purpose for the good of the civilization. If your property is damaged, which stops you from being able to do those things, or it impacts you no longer being able to invest your earnings on your business, but now you're on your welfare because it's been damaged, then that violates this definition. Like I'm actually trying to think of examples that you would go to court with that this definition doesn't apply to.
Well, you know what, too, to extend, I just thought of something as you were saying that, to extend on that, minding your own business, if you lounge around, don't get a job, and don't mind your own business, or don't create a business for yourself, I think that would also fall within this definition. I think somebody who would dwell in society, benefit from it, but not contribute, I think most people would see that as an injustice as well.
Could well be. I think there are a few different sort of attributes to this, and look, could be, yeah. Look, you might be right, Tim, because well, I think you are right as far as that tenet goes around the core of what the law is. I guess I just had in mind that justice was going to be something that was a bit more than personal property and just sort of, I don't know, doing
Fulfilling
your
your
own biz.
duty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess just because the reverence in the way that we've sort of built this thing up, it just felt like it's going to be something more than that, though. That's all. So,
But could you
No,
define it
yeah.
as taking that the definition is that you are achieving your proper place in society as a functioning person, and so anything
That
that
still feels a little empty.
but is it like it's like
Maybe
if
not.
if you can't if something obstructs you from being the best you can be in, and to function at the best level that you can function at to the good of society, then that's an injustice.
what would you then sort of say that injustice is to take away purpose?
That is an injustice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Big
because
time.
that sort of seems to be what they're talking about here. Is like, this society has given you a purpose, and if there's something that happens that takes away your purpose,
So why is I think it's a good definition. I think we've not realised how good it is. Like if you think about imprisoning people, like if you invade somewhere else and stop those people from living properly, or you set up a segregation where you have a different set of rules for one people to another, it still means that they can't be their best and contribute to society. Like I don't know, like everything that, as I'm saying, I'm struggling to think of a definition that doesn't work with this definition. Or an
You might
example
be right.
that doesn't work with this definition.
I
feel like
think
it's an
certainly needs
underwhelming.
it warrants further thought. I'm definitely going to dwell on it and give it some thought throughout the week.
it certainly fits with Socrates' simple philosophy. You know what I mean? Like, why overcomplicate it? Let's keep it simple. And in that sense, it is simple and it does function, like you're sort of saying, Tim.
It functions like if someone hurt my child, that impacts, and parking the fact, I'm not saying it's sensitive, parking the fact that it's impacted my child, that actually does impact me as well, because it impacts my productivity level and all these different. Like I'm not saying perhaps it's not the complete definition of what justice is, but I think it's a part of what justice is.
They get
Yeah.
there, which
Yeah.
they more or less say, because
Yeah.
they kind of go, yeah, let's see where we go when we start looking at the individual.
Yeah, I think it's going to wind up being something a little different, but I think that's certainly going to be a tenet of it, though, for sure.
It feels like Newton's law. Like it feels like it's good enough to get us into the air.
Yeah.
But then we'll probably fine tune it later.
You're going to need
probably right.
Einsteinian physics later on to supplement it.
Yeah.
What about more broadly in terms of let's just say we're roughly halfway.
Okay.
I don't know whether you could say, but we're halfway. We're roughly halfway. What are people's more broad thoughts? Because mine are, I'm still really enjoying it. Like particularly how we were laughing about them sort of having a go at each other. I'm still finding when it gets dry that it sort of gets broken up with banter, and in terms of entertainment value, I'm still really enjoying it.
Yeah, me too. It's also caused me to research and look up a whole bunch of other stuff as well, because there's words or concepts that aren't necessarily used today or are used in different ways, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, they've used a specific word, and I'll be like, I've got an idea what that means, but let me just check what the real definition of what that is, because sometimes it's got a bit more sort of weight or meaning to it than what I thought. So it's been good in that sense, I think, just broadening of horizons, and just general understanding, which is never a bad thing.
Hey, here's an interesting question. You know how Socrates bangs on about that education, and we need to have that education and build that character. Do you feel like really reading this book would function in that way?
As in giving us a better understanding of character to be able to impart in our lives and our people
Like
around us?
if Socrates wrote a curriculum for our kids,
Yeah.
would he include his own book?
Well,
I think
it's
his
not
ego
his.
would
should
say
he?
It's. I don't think he would because he never wrote anything down. That's why Plato wrote it down.
Well, Plato. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Good
But
point.
would it qualify?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think he likes to set framework and allow others to sort of do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you mean that in the nicest way possible.
Oh, absolutely. But look, I think he's definitely got some good ideas. And if you do think about it, it does bring to question. Where is character instilled from in the education of kids today? And obviously, that's a big part of the role of the parent, right? And you're going to have to say that that's probably where it's falling at the moment because they're certainly not getting that in school. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that. You might be getting some elements, but
that's what we were talking about the other week when I suggested that we actually don't have that noble lie in our country because of us being so diverse. Which it's not a criticism, just a statement. But
I don't even know if it's about the all-encompassing
Unifying myth.
Yeah, but even just discussing, I suppose, pretty generic personal philosophy and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit hard for kids to get their heads around. I mean, the kids are usually a lot smarter than you give them credit for, if you know what I mean. And,
I'm discovering that like around the campfire,
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's that like our society hammers into us. You never talk about religion or politics. And that's exactly what I want to set out to do with this show. Like in part, like we have to talk about them. Otherwise, how are you going to figure it out? How are you going to learn about it?
But my response to that statement, you should never discuss religion and politics. My response to that is, what else is there to discuss?
Well, I was going to say, I mean,
what else is there?
Well, more or less, when you look back at some of this Socratic writing or Plato's writing and all that sort of stuff, I suppose that is what they were talking about. Politics. What else is there?
I wonder if because our forefathers were so successful at building the society we're in, we just haven't had to think about these things.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this makes me think a lot about conversations I used to have with my grandfather because he had some, very strong views on politics in this country, and we'd have really long conversations. It's those things like you'd have dinner and dinner would run for hours because you'd wind up just talking about what's been happening in the news as far as, what Australia is doing and what our politicians are doing about it and, what's right and what's wrong. And it's funny, I don't have that dialogue really anymore with anyone since my grandfather's passed away because you're right, it's not a conversation that you tend to have as broadly in this current sort of society.
But it's part of that also because it's more tribal now. Like you've got this very... I know we're not America, but there's still like a very strong left versus right sort of mentality. And, like I'm wearing a Panthers hat right now. It's like Panthers versus Eels mentality. Like, if you've got a Panthers hat on, you suck. Or if you've got an Eels hat on, you suck. Everyone knows that if the Eels hat means you suck, not the Panthers hat. But
so people just feel like you're better off not mentioning what your politics are or what your religion is. Or
I mean, there's guys at work who wear Eels clothes. Whenever I see them, I say, "I'm trying to build a culture of winning here. Why are you wearing that?" Just to torment them. But look, seriously though, like I think maybe like I recall my grandfather would watch Channel 9 News and then go straight to ABC News, and he wasn't offended by either. He would just watch both. And I'd say, why do you watch both for? It's the same news stories. And he'd go, oh, they have different perspectives. So I watch the two, and then I kind of figure out what I think from watching both of them. And but no one does that anymore because people get offended by one or the other.
Well, there's that, but also I think like more people these days are being informed by social media than actual factual information.
Oh yeah. Actually, here's an experiment I've been doing. Sorry to cut you off.
That's right.
For the last few weekends in a row, I've bought a newspaper and I've read it from cover to cover to see what the news is like without algorithms telling me what my news should be. And I have found many articles that I would never have seen and had no idea were a thing by just getting a newspaper. And I've changed which newspaper it is each week, so I'm not just buying one newspaper. But that's been a really interesting experiment because I've seen a lot of things come up that I had no idea were going on. And yet I check, news.com.au daily, I check SMH daily, I check my Facebook feed daily. No idea about half of these things. And they're relevant. Like, they're Australia-specific, proper things that we probably should know about. Had no idea.
Do we need to have another segment on this podcast called What's in the Paper? Or is that's not middle-aged man stuff, that's old man stuff?
Yeah, I'm building up to it.
It is, but it's also relevant. I don't know. I mean, it's actually something I've been giving some thought to recently, and in particular, I think I don't see enough about sort of world events and what's happening outside of our shores as well, other than the usual sort of US diatribe that we sort of get pumped into us over here. And I guess I watched a bit of SBS World News and stuff like that, which I hadn't watched for a long time, but they often have like really good reporting on sort of what's happening outside of our borders, and you can sort of see some really different stuff that's going on and go, God damn, there's some really hectic shit going on that most of us here are pretty cocooned from.
Yeah.
And we're too busy watching, I don't know, Tracy Griswold talking about someone doing skids down Parramatta Road or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I can highly recommend a YouTube channel called Caspian Report. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They do one report a week. They usually go for 20 minutes to 40 minutes, and they will choose they're geopolitical. They'll just choose a continent and go, this is currently what's going on. And they're extremely neutral. They don't push any specific political agenda. Excellently made videos. And they talk about hard topics. They talk about, is China going to invade, Taiwan or something like that? Or is the India-China conflict, where's that up to? Or what's going on in the Middle East? They'll just dig right in and put it all on the table without calling any of the players a villain, without calling any of the players the hero. They'll just say, this has happened, this country is now doing this seems to be their strategy, and they just lay it out. It's brilliant. It's a really good channel. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising when you start looking outside what's going on. I mean, it's a couple of months back, Burma had a coup and the military took over the country. And it's like, I'd guarantee like 95% of Aussies had no idea that's going on. Yeah.
I'm not even sure I could point out Burma on a map. Is it near Cambodia?
Yeah. It's in blurry borders. It's all good. I just think most people don't really have maybe enough knowledge to, and I'm putting myself in that basket as well, right? To feel confident arguing about politics in Australia even now, because I don't know, how well informed are they aside from looking at the tweets for whoever's putting out stuff this week, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's so much rhetoric around too. Yeah, how do you get past that? Actually just look at objectively what's going on. It's very difficult.
Fake news.
Yeah. Well, that was a good conversation. So what do we want to say our definition of justice is based on reading this? If we had to formulate a sentence, what is justice? What do we
according to Socrates?
So far? True, sure. Yeah. What do we
mean according to Socrates?
Yeah. Justice is smooching off your mates while you ramble.
Talking out your ass. Drinking their wine.
So he's getting justice. He's doing what he's good at.
Could it be doing the best with what you've got and not messing around with what other people have? Is that good for a layman?
Yeah, I still like the which was just the paragraph in there, which was the having and doing of what is a man's own and what belongs to him.
Yeah, that's good.
Because, yeah, just if you're looking after your own stuff and you're not messing with someone else's, then you're going to be doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Best thing for
Don't
the
tread
state,
on
best
me,
thing for you,
man.
best thing for your neighbours.
Do unto others
How
about
as
you,
you would
Tim?
have them do unto you. Might be another way of saying that.
Sure.
Well, that was good. Look forward to next week, and we start to dive into the zoomed in version of the individual.
Justice as an individual. All right, cool.
Well, thanks for joining us, gentlemen. If you're listening at home, we appreciate you joining in, and hooray, we've got some sort of definition at this zoomed out level, so we're making progress. And just like this definition, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither are middle-aged men. So have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.
Sure.